But here's the interesting thing about this particular picture of His Imperial Majesty with his right arm raised, and Winston Churchill there in the picture, circa 1940 or so. This is after the exile. What the symbol that is expressed here by his arm raised, as well as the biblical prophecy and the ancient mythology of AMSU HORUS, or Horus AMSU, where it states that he hath shown strength with his arm, and where he, AMSU HORUS, personates the arm of the Lord outstretched from the mummy of matter. He is called the arm raiser, and through his potency the other arm bound up in the mummy case is set free, and the Osiris, or Osar, emerges pure spirit with both arms intact and both feet in motion. Isaiah the prophet says, "Behold, look and see, Nahu, Neho, Adonai Yahweh, the Lord God will come as a mighty one, and his arm shall rule for him." Isaiah 49:10. In this aspect, he comes as the good shepherd, quote, "He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs in his arms and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those that are with young." Isaiah 49:11. This was Horus, the Ethiopic Cherui, or the chosen one, the elect, the lifter of his arm for Osar, or Osiris, upon whose shoulder rested the insignia of his government, which included the whip, or the flail, and the shepherd's crook. As the good shepherd, Cherui, or Horus, tends the sheep of his father and comes to gather them in his fold, he was personified as the delegated power that drove with the whip and drew them with the heck of rule, which became the shepherd's crook. The portrait of Cherui, the good shepherd, or Nolawi, Erenya, Roi, who was likewise the arm of the Lord, the arm of Yahweh in this picture of pastoral tenderness, was readapted by the Hebrew writer for the comforting of distressed Jerusalem. The character and the picture belong to the Amenta in the ritual, and these have been represented as if belonging to this earth, whereas the good shepherd and the sheep, the fields of peace and pastures of plenty beside the still waters, pertain to Hotep, or what's known as Hotep, the paradise of peace, of the, quote, Prince of Peace, end quote, who is proclaimed by Yeshayahu or Isaiah as having come. He came annually and periodically in the mythos. It is said, quote, "The government shall be upon his shoulder," according to chapter 9, verse 6 of Isaiah. So was it with the Egyptian Prince of Peace, as Cherui, or as the chosen, the elect, the sustainer of his father. On the night of setting up the Tat, or the Tat, and of establishing Cherui in the place of the dead Osiris, Horus takes the government upon his shoulder. It is said, quote, "The setting up of the Tat of stability means the shoulder of the elect, or Cherui, Horus, that is, the shoulder with which he sustains the government," according to Ritual chapter 18. In this sense, he was the arm of the Lord, quote, "the lifter of the arm," end quote, called, quote, "the avenger of the left arm of Osar, which is in Sechem," end quote. So Cherui, Horus, images the mummy Osiris in the resurrection. That's why when you take a look at this picture and you put it in the historical context, this was a resurrection both of the kingship or the imperial domain of the King of Kings, as well as a resurrection of Ethiopia in that sense, since Ethiopia already was written off, as well as proof of the title Moa Anbesa Ze'im Negeda Yehuda, the conquering line of the tribe of Judah. He could have been named conquering line of the tribe of Judah, as many other Ethiopian emperors were, but he proved it 5 years to the very day. Some would say 1,000 years from now, oh, this was a mythology. It was never really, it really didn't happen. It was part of a ritual, 5 years to the day. How could that happen? But if you check history and our story, it really did happen. And it's also a part of the ancient mythology. So who but the Almighty could fulfill his own prophecy, especially with such things that on one hand are astronomical and astrological and astronomical, taking place on the celestial clock above, and then having the image reflected, the express image on earth. So Horus, who is in Ethiopic Cherui, the chosen, images the mummy Osar or Osiris in the resurrection. With the right arm lifted, he wields the scepter of his power that signifies his triumph over death and hell and the grave. He also bears the sign of government, the Malkut, according to the Kabbalah, or the Mengist, according to the Ethiopic, upon his other shoulder. What a portrait of level-browed justice is that of AMSU HORUS, who is, and this is also interesting as well, that at first they interpreted as Chem, or Chem, Chem. Then they said his name was Min. Then finally they got their interpretation to recognize it was AMSU. So the one known as Min, who is known as Chem or Chem, is actually AMSU as well. So AMSU HORUS, who is described as the God or the Elohim, the Neta, quote, whose eyebrows are like the two arms of the balance or scales or mizan, upon that day when outrage is brought to account and each wrong is tied up to its separate block of settlement. Chapter 17. I really love this verse right here. He's the God or the Elohim whose eyebrows are like the two arms of the balance or the scales, the mizan bamarinya, upon that day when outrage is brought to account and each wrong, each bedel, is tied up to its separate block of settlement. Oh, amen, amen. This is the judge in person of the Son, the Elohim who lifted up his arm and who is the arm of the Lord made manifest for the execution of justice. And this is the arm of the Lord invoked for the same purpose by Isaiah, which alone explains the expression, quote, mine arm shall judge the peoples, end quote. This biblical expression that a lot of these so-called counterfeit Christian folks and Jewish folks would wrestle and make up stuff and twist and assume a lot of things for what this means. But when you put it in its proper context, it becomes clear. Mine arm shall judge the peoples. The veil of words in the Hebrew constantly conceals the wisdom of the Egyptians, as the wisdom of the Egyptians conceals the wisdom of the ancient Tobians or Ethiopians that lies beyond it in the Hebrew or so-called Jewish scriptures. And this is the rending or the ripping of the veil. One must observe in passing that if the divine victim and the redemption from sin were simply historical and once for all, these must certainly have already taken place when Isaiah wrote. And if it had been once for all, it could not have occurred once afterwards. Besides, the same victim is described in the Psalms, the Mezmor Dawit, as suffering or having suffered the same sacrifice. Stay tuned. More to come.